Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your Leeds United versus Crystal Palace preview. Now I want to start by saying let's not talk about the last time that Crystal Palace came to Elland Road, because I was actually at the match, and I'm sure a lot of you were as well. And of course it was that humbling defeat 5-1, which basically sparked the end of Gracia, was it? Yeah, Gracia. And of course was complete humiliation and basically sent us down. So let's forget about that. That was in the past now, happened, isn't going to happen again, hopefully, touch wood, and we can move on to present day Leeds United, in which, to be fair, are Leeds United that are actually in really, really good form at this moment in time, have obviously unbeaten in the last 3 games. And actually, you're looking at this weekend thinking, if Leeds United can get points against Crystal Palace, then of course going into the game and we do get the 3 points, West Ham probably lose to Man City and we get that 6-point gap, which is of course what we've titled the video about. Can Leeds United extend the gap? Because we know after this week, obviously West Ham have got them 4 really strong fixtures, so we need that real cushion, and if we can get that this weekend, obviously that would be fantastic news. But obviously, there's plenty of decisions to make. And I think with this one, more than ever, there is plenty of decisions to make. Do Leeds United go and stick with the 3-5-2? Or do they gamble and go to a 4-3? And actually, in this video as well, we're going to talk about another formation that potentially Leeds United could play that I think, actually, might be the best of both worlds. So we'll talk about that as well. And we'll obviously get into Crystal Palace. Because actually, with Crystal Palace, people, you're probably not expecting this. But actually, Oliver Glasner's revealed his whole team. I think that was part of it, was trying to have a bit of a punt at the board and say, look, I'm going to have to tell everyone my team because, truthfully, I don't have anyone else that can play. And I think that was part of it. But not a bad situation for Leeds United to be in, of course. Jack says, evening, Scott. Evening to you too, Jack. Nice to see you in the chat, as always. But let's have a start. I think let's start in the most basic way. And let's start by talking about sort of how Leeds United are going to do this. So Crystal Palace, for a bit of insight, they have the best away form in the division at this moment in time. They sit top of the league. There is context to that. I think they've played Wolves, Burnley, Fulham, and West Ham away from home. So that's why, obviously, they've won a lot of home games. But they have got the best home form in the league. They've also had a away form in the league, should I say. And, of course, having said all them teams, one of the things you're probably going to expect is that, well, they are... Blimey. They are pretty good at beating some of the lower teams in the division, of course, Leeds United being one of them. The other thing to bear in mind with this game, of course, as well, is that, yes, Crystal Palace did play on Thursday night, but actually, basically the entire squad didn't play on Thursday night, and some of them came on, but for the most part, they didn't actually play as well. So, yes, a bit of an advantage from that, but not as much as maybe we anticipated. But let's talk about Leeds United a bit, because the truth of the matter is, as I said, 3-5-2, 4-3-3, what do we expect? Well, let me get up, as I always do on these, what it's sort of all going to look like and how it's all going to line up, and then we can go from there, really. So, this is my sort of predicted 11, I think, for the game. And obviously, I've got Crystal Palace 11. And thanks to, as I said, thanks to Glasner, this is the exact 11 I'm going to play, unless I potentially they get injured on the, I don't know, car journey up or something. I don't know. But this is going to be the 11 that starts for Crystal Palace. Now, this is obviously in the 5-3-2 formation, which I think is potentially most likely, just because we've played it in the last few weeks. But there's obviously a number of things that else we can do with this that makes it quite interesting, because... truthfully, I'm looking at this moment in time, and I think the benefit of playing this formation is obviously this is what we're used to. I think we look much more defensively assured in this formation as well, as you guys know. We've talked about on this channel a lot for the defensive security that the 5-2 plays in terms of stopping these balls that we conceded down the lines. I think we get the dominance in midfield as well. So there is a lot of benefits to this formation. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin's been working up front. But I think for me, the problem has been with this is that Okafor, does he work as that number 9? Because, yes, obviously played decently well in the most recent game against Brentford. But again, what we're actually looking for in our number 9 is obviously to hold it up and bring people into play. Not as much for the performance that we saw from him in the other game. Obviously, in the game most recently. So... away at Brentford. I'll get this as well so I can get your comments in. Evening, pizza tonight. Is it, Scooby? I had pizza as well tonight, mate, as well, so I hope you enjoy it. I went for, it was called a meat supreme. It had pepperoni, it had a bit of ham on there. You might have had a bit of chicken, or I can't fully remember, but I went for a meat supreme as well. I also got a garlic bread as well, and to be honest with you, there's a bit of a reason that I was nearly burping at the start of this show, because it's hit me like a train, let's say. Back three is going to be tough to deal with. Need wing-backs flying, especially in Klein's side. Yeah, it's funny, actually. I was going to talk about this, and it's interesting you mentioned that, Jack. I think when I've looked at Leeds United, when they're at full strength, and when they play the 5 back to the most efficient ways, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. It's when Goodmanson plays really high and Bogle plays really high. Like, if you remember against Chelsea, obviously, when it was the most effective game of its playing in, really, Bogle actually, in the first few minutes, chased down a ball around here and pressed them into oblivion. And I think we won a corner or maybe won a throw-in from it. And that's the intensity we need to start with against Crystal Palace. This is a Crystal Palace that, as I said, did get rested at the midweek. But for the most part, I've played tons and tons of games. This exact squad have been playing week in, week out, and they're knackered. So for me, the way Leeds United win this game, a lot of it is the physicality, and it is by being intensity. And I think obviously with Leeds United having the extra break that Crystal Palace haven't had, and the lack of games that we've had in comparison to them, again, should be a huge positive. So as I said, if we're going to play this, we need the wing backs high. However, I was thinking of this all the way through, and as we've talked about, the other way of doing this is potentially going to a 4-3-3, and basically if you're doing a 4-3-3, you'd probably go and take Biol out like you'd expect, maybe obviously bring these centre-backs a bit quieter, a bit closer, and then obviously get Nonto. Where is he? Where is our boy Nonto? There he is. And bring Nonto and sort of play him on the right-hand side and play you sort of 4-3-3. And that could be a potential. Now, the thing with this is that we lose obviously the strength of all the centre backs on the pitch, and we potentially lose the channel balls. And of course, if you look at sort of Crystal Palace's makeup, they've actually got sort of two number 9s on the pitch in Mateta and Nketiah. So do you really almost sometimes want to be 2 versus them 2 number 9s? Potentially not. So I was thinking about this today. I was thinking, all right, so I don't really like the full advantages of 4-3-3. I don't really like the full advantages of a 5-3-2. So what's something in between? And then I thought, could we play something like a 3-4-3? And could you say pull Tanaka out, who actually didn't play that well in the most recent game, play Stack and Ampadu as your midfield 3, and play Goodmanson and Bogle high and sort of sit in a 3-4-3. And then you think, actually, the negative usually about playing a 3-4-3, in my personal opinion, is that you're left with 2 midfielders in the middle of the park. That is always the problem. And you basically get outnumbered. You see it all the time with Amroom's Manchester United. That's their main problem, that they get outnumbered in the midfield. But unlike majority of teams that play with a 3 midfield, you're actually playing a Crystal Palace team with 2 in midfield. And obviously, this is kind of the formation that they play, the 3-4-3. So I was just going, actually, if Leeds United are ever going to play 4-3-3, or 3-4-3, should I say, this might be the game to do it. So I just thought I'd propose that as an idea, because I do think, even if we don't start with this, I think this is something you could do. I've just realised I've not put Biol back in. So we're basically playing without an extra player here. Where is he? Biol. But this is something that I think could be maybe something a bit of an in-betweener between the two. And I think this could be potentially quite effective. The only thing that I would say in with this is that Pino naturally is not a winger by trade like Nonto and Okafor is, so he's going to drift inside a lot of the time and pick up these pockets, and then you could be in a situation naturally then when you've got Wharton, Hughes and Pino in a midfield 3. So I think, look, as always, there is negatives to playing this formation, and there is with every formation, but I wonder if something like this can be a mix between the two. I just thought I'd propose that as an idea. So let me know what you think of that in the comments below if you are watching live. And if you're not, obviously, in as well. Can't remember the name. Pepperoni Jabrini, I think. Kind of a spicy pepperoni with vodka sauce. Blimey. I got a free slightly burnt margarita as well. Blimey. Jesus, proper food that, mate. I appreciate it. Fish and chips on a Thursday and pizza on a Friday. I'm hoping it's curry on a Saturday as well, or potentially a Chinese, and you can get the hat trick. That will be ideal for you. But yeah, this is what I just said. I'm just be interested to know what you guys think of sort of something like this. But you look at, when I was looking as well today, when obviously we're building this, I was looking at it going, usually the Crystal Palace team worries me, but actually I think not having Munoz and having Nathaniel Klein at sort of wing back, I do think it's a massive negative, because I don't think he's anywhere near as good, in my opinion, as Munoz. He's a massive threat that obviously they're missing. Jack says, wouldn't go with a 2 midfield. Having width isn't worth sacrificing the man in midfield. Wing backs flying gives us the width anyway. This is where I do agree. The only reason I think I like this is because it gets Nonto in the team. But truthfully, I know what you mean in terms of, because the other benefit is as well, we're talking about this formation naturally in the middle of the park. You get a situation where we're not outnumbered. But if you obviously go back to a sort of 3 midfield, let's remake it now again, wherever Tanaka is. Where's Tanaka gone? Blimey, this thing does my head in sometimes. There he is. So if you go back to this formation, naturally the benefit of this is, as I said, you actually can outnumber them in midfield again. So, you know, And potentially that's where Leeds United's midfield dominance, because as I said, when we're talking about one of the ways Leeds United can win this game, we're talking about we can win this through intensity, and we can win this through intensity by bossing it in the midfield. And as I said, when you're coming up against two, do you really want to give that advantage away by not playing a 3 in there and being able to bully them 3 versus 2? I'm not so sure. Obviously, as well, the other benefit is that Wharton is obviously a fantastic footballer, and do you sort of want to outnumber them in midfield to stop the influence of Wharton? Because I think a lot of the time, if you stop Wharton getting these straight passes through into Mateta or into Pino, I do think you stop a lot of what Crystal Palace can do, especially when you know that they've obviously got Nathaniel Klein on the right-hand side and not Munoz, who would normally play much higher. Because Klein obviously naturally will not be as aggressive as Munoz because he hasn't got the recovery pace to get back in when he progresses up the pitch. Scooby says, I like Snacker too much, and often he pushes up for a press. It's more, and just more up anyway. Yeah, I'm watching my figure. Let's have a look anyway. But yeah, this is a few things that I wanted to talk about regarding formation. Plus Tanaka in a 2 up those kind of more central 3 up top is really 2 wingers or one and Brendan and an isolated 9. Yeah, I know what you mean. I've read that completely wrong, but I know what you're trying to say. Anyway, let's get back to the other page, shall we? Let's shut this down. What have I done here? I've just shut down my OBS, which is a bit daft. Let's grab it. Right. Let's bring this back over. Do you know when you're doing this in person, it's very difficult at live, shall I say? Anyway, so we're back to it. So, oh, for goodness sake, it's too much. It's honestly, to be honest, boys, it's too much. And females, if there are any watching, females. I don't know why I said it like that, but yeah. Anyway. What I was going to say as well is, and I probably should have gone back to that other slide for it now, but Crystal Palace did actually name their 11, which, as I said, I thought was bizarre. And also, I think going into the game, do you remember when, obviously, Bielsa used to do it for Leeds United? He used to name our 11 beforehand. And I always thought it was a massive disadvantage. So I think that's a slightly bizarre, but, you know. Anyway. What's the knacker in it too? Yeah. But how do I expect this game to go fundamentally? Because it's going to be a bit of a short show. Need to get the 11 changed to the back 3 on the right, Scott. Yeah, I've just realised that. But yeah, fundamentally, how do I expect this game to go, and sort of where and do I expect Leeds United to win the game? I'm actually going into this. I've got to be honest with you lot. I'm actually going into this game quite optimistic. I think that Leeds United can do. I think Leeds United can win at the weekend. I really do think it. I think that you look through their sort of team, as I said, the tiredness that they've displayed. I think that obviously with the form that our players are in as well, I actually look at this as a real opportunity. And I think you've got to bear in mind, obviously, we've got Sunderland coming up as well, which is obviously another game where I think Leeds United can get points in. And I actually genuinely think at 8 o'clock under the lights, I'm expecting a Leeds United win. I really am. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with it. Sorry, I'm just trying to grab my notes here. I'm optimistic too. Just got a feeling. Yeah, I have. It's one of them where I think we've got actually. I know obviously we lost in the most recent game 5-1 to Crystal Palace, and you look at it and you go sort of, well, that's not ideal. Which obviously we talked about at the start of the video. But I actually look at the situation and I sort of. I remember the game before that I think he handballed it really late on, and we ended up winning the game quite comfortably in the end. So as I said, I'm quite optimistic about it, truthfully. Hopefully not a repeat of last time we played Palace. Yeah, exactly. No, definitely that would be a bit of a nightmare. Anyway, that is where I'm at with it today. I hope you've all enjoyed the video as always. Sorry it's a bit of a shorter show, but truthfully, I don't really love previews anyway. But I thought I'd give you one because. You know, why not, I guess. And obviously, this being such a big game for Leeds United, it kind of made sense. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. And I will see you tomorrow for the match reaction, so stay along for that. It will be straight after the game, a late one. And then, obviously, on Sunday, we'll have the closing whistle as well for the game. Anyway, thanks all for watching, and I will see you later, everybody. Bye for now.